Hello, hello, and hi, everyone. Thank you for joining BPIAChats today. I'm Alexandra Maloney, and I am your host, and I hope everyone is staying safe and lifted during this time. So the purpose of the BPIAChat series is to share the experiences and insight of members of the international affairs community, and hopefully to inspire the next generation to explore opportunities in the field. Also, the thoughts and views of our guest speakers are their own. We are currently streaming live, and this talk will be published on our IGTV and our YouTube channels afterwards. So if you haven't already, please follow Black Professionals in International Affairs, as well as our guest speaker, whose information can be found in the handle on the flyer on our page. And lastly, we encourage, I see you got some supporters already dropping some emojis. And lastly, we encourage viewers to chime in below in the thread with comments and questions that they may have. So without further ado, I will introduce our guest speaker for today. Ms. Maurielle Stewart is a creative leader from Cheverly, Maryland. As a recovering politico and former elected official, she has recently made an exciting pivot towards social entrepreneurship. Her ultimate goal is to marry mindfulness and politics, as those crafting the bounds of our society should be the most enlightened. But along the way, Maurielle wants to help all that are ready to rise to the best versions of themselves. So join me in welcoming Miss Maurielle. Jazz hands. So I'd like to start off by asking, how are things with you right now? How, the work and the things that you're doing, how is that affected by, the COVID-19 situation?
You know what? I am so blessed, and this has actually been a time of not survival, but I've been thriving during this time, which is it's a hard position to be in because one, I'm so thankful for the the gifts that have been given to me during this time, but also so mindful of all the heartbreak and, the sadness that's going on by everybody touched by the coronavirus. So I feel wonderful, but I'm also sending love to those that aren't.
Thank you for that. So could you share a little bit more about your, what got your journey? So what got you to where you are now?
You know what? Okay. So I got where I am based on what I call a silent whisper, a panic attack, and so I was little. This is a couple years ago, and I'm driving down to a job that I hated, and I'm listening to a podcast, and it just comes to me like, girl, you are so good at plugging into other people's things. When are you going to build your own thing? It's time for you to build your own. And I had no idea what that looked like, but I felt so compelled to try to figure it out. So I kind of like stuck that whisper like in my back pocket. During that time, I was expanding and growing as a person. I've always been on a self-improvement and self-love journey, trying to understand how I operate and how I'm wired and how I can be my best self. And so as I'm growing and expanding, I'm starting to feel a resistance against the work that I'm doing. This is when I'm in politics. And it became too much. So I was diagnosed with depression and a panic disorder, and I had to step out of it completely. I made a pivot into the social entrepreneurship field, working for an organization called Ashoka. And that was my attempt at wanting to save the world. Like, I was in politics, I was an elected official, but essentially I felt at times like I was just taking up space in a cubicle and like pushing papers, and like I wasn't having the direct effect on people in the world that I wanted to have. So I went to this organization that was working on glorifying and supporting social entrepreneurs all around the world. When I say social entrepreneurs, that is somebody with the heart of an entrepreneur, but wants to create solutions for all. And I got an email when I first got there about a coaching program, and immediately it hit me like, okay, this is next. Like sometimes it comes quick. Sometimes it comes so quick, and you got to be ready to act. So I saw that email about this program. Because I worked there, I was able to get it on scholarship, and
Wow.
it's been an amazing year since then. I actually graduated last week, And I'm just standing at the field of abundance, trying to figure out which way to go next.
And can you share more about your certification and the life coaching perspectives and what that means for people who may not know what that is or what that could look like?
Yeah, so I actually don't like I don't like the phrase life coach because it seems so cheesy. It really does. And
Mm-hmm.
what my classmates have been trained to do is so much more than that. So essentially, you can come to a life coach for a host of reasons. Maybe you have a professional goal that you're trying to attain, maybe you have some personal development you're trying to work on. But the root of it all is self-correcting and self-generating excellence, whatever way excellence means for you. And so there are endless permutations of how we can work with people, but we do incorporate the entire person in our work. So even though say you're coming to me with an issue at work, we're going to look at you as the entire organism, an entire person, because your mental health is not separated from your physical health. Your performance at work is not who you are at home. And so the integral method that I'm certified in really looks at the person as an entire ecosystem. Yeah.
Thank you for sharing that. We're here with Miss Maurielle Stewart, who is sharing her experience in the political space and in the social entrepreneurship space. So please feel free to ask any questions or put any comments that you may have in the thread below. So could you share a little bit more, like what's your connection with the international affairs space and the international space?
Yeah, so connected a few different ways. Mostly I'm a fan. And I have been wanting to get into the international space since I could remember. So I majored in political science when I was an undergrad. I've done extensive traveling to almost about 30 countries, so I definitely consider myself a global citizen. And I wanted to marry my love for the world with my love for government and politics. So how can I get in there? In doing that, I joined BPIA and started getting connected with folks of color in that field there. And then my moving to Ashoka, which was an international organization, was my first attempt and my first taste at getting into the global space. So yeah, so those are my connections, and I want to continue to build out what my intersection looks like in advocacy and diplomacy. I'm not sure what that looks like yet, but I definitely feel like there's a home for me there. So I'm still figuring it all out, Alex.
Yes, look, aren't we all still figuring it out? So the topic for this discussion is on imposter syndrome. So could you share, what does imposter syndrome look like? And then, my follow-up question, of course, will be, what are ways that folks can tackle or overcome that imposter syndrome? So to the students that may be listening or, hear this talk.
Yeah. Okay, imposter syndrome, we all experience it. And that is when you walk into a room or a space and you feel like you're underqualified, or you feel like, how the heck did I get in here with all these people? Or I am way underqualified. I am going to be exposed. And other different ways that can show up for people, but it's the feeling like you don't belong, you can't quite cut it, my days are numbered. What can you do to combat that? You can, one, understand that all of those things are a lie. And if everyone else is in the room, why not you? Why not you? I also believe in, honestly, faking it until you make it. We can call upon confidence whenever we need it. We can call upon being outgoing when we need it. We can call upon being charismatic and eloquent whenever we need it. Those things aren't beyond our reach. And so it's important for someone who may be feeling nervous to understand that those resources are available to them at any moment. You don't have to be a certain type of person or have this degree or have been in the field for this long. Like, you can be that person right now, and you can start practicing that right now.
And I appreciate you for saying that. I think that I agree with you. And as I've entered this field and professional space, I realized there were moments of self-doubt where I was like, do I deserve to be here? Or is my voice valid? in this space? Do I have the authority to speak in this space? And I think that one of the biggest things that has been helpful for me is, first of all, coming prepared, doing your background research, whatever the case may be, where you are looking to contribute in some way, and also being open to knowing what you do and don't know. Right? You don't have to pretend and act like you know everything or know all the things. So, it's okay to say, I don't know much about that. Thank you for raising that point. I'm going to do some more research and let me circle back to you when I can.
That brings up for me, you mentioned worth, and you must separate your worth from what you're coming into that room to do, because the two are not connected. Right. Like, you are intrinsically worthy just because, and your voice is valid because it's yours, so like, come in prepared, know your stuff, but also understand that you are worthy just because, period. On period.
Right. Yes. Okay, thank you. That's true. So we had one question from a viewer, Miss Vannery Kong, who is a BPI board member, but she's asking about your experience while in office. So maybe you could share a little bit about your experience and some of the things, what you liked most about it and what may have been challenging in that space.
Hi, Tracy. My big sister from Paris is on, so hey, Trace. What did I love about it? I loved having a platform. I loved having a platform to build community, to talk about issues and communicate in a way with people that was valuable and important to me. I was the first person to organize a corporate conversation about race and social injustice in my town's history. Wow. And it was because of the platform that I had. I loved getting to know the people in my town in a really intimate way. I loved my town is like this perfect, like almost like a utopia small town, and so it was so good to be able to just serve the place that I owe so much, honestly. The opportunities for learning were so wide, and I appreciated all the people that I got to meet, all the issues I got to learn about, and making sure that I felt like decisions were made from a place of equity. What didn't I like? I did not like the power shuffle.
Okay.
And that happens. And that was probably the hardest thing, because my intentions were pure. And there are other people that you serve with that are your colleagues, same footing as you, who have different motivations. And so at times it became hard to reconcile my motivations with theirs. But that happens. Mm-hmm. That happens everywhere. But that was one of my biggest challenges, for sure.
Thank you for sharing that. We're here with Miss Maurielle Stewart, who is a former, I like how you call it, recovering politico, and former elected official, who is speaking and currently moving towards social entrepreneurship, which I'm interested in learning more about. We have another question from a friend of mine, Kira. She says, can we both, and we kind of did at the beginning, but maybe we'll just give a little taste. Can you speak on how you both began your journey to where you are now? So maybe I'll start and then I'll let you share a little bit, just like briefly. But my background is in international affairs and national security. Throughout my academic journey, I've tried to be intentional in choosing different professional opportunities or exposure opportunities to get me to where I am and where I'm trying to go. So in school, I studied international affairs, went on to get my master's in public administration, and specializing in organizational design and diversity and inclusion, specifically for foreign affairs. So Maurielle, maybe feel free to share, just so concise for folks who have just joined in.
Yeah, sure. So I studied political science in undergrad. I was on the board of student trustees as a voting member when I was there, which linked me to my first boss, Congressman Steny Hoyer. I worked in constituent services for him for about 4 years. Then I got picked up by the Obama administration as an appointee at NASA, which was amazing. Then I rerouted into local government and spent some time on the municipal level as an elected official, spent some time on the county level in the county executive's office, and also working in the state house during session. And then I applied to my social entrepreneurship job at Ashoka, and Ashoka led me to my coaching certification. So it's literally been lily pad to lily pad to lily pad to lily pad. Yeah.
What sort of things did you do at NASA? I'm curious.
So, my day-to-day stuff wasn't that interesting, honestly. I was special assistant supporting the first African-American woman general counsel in the agency's history. So my being able to shadow her
That's
was like,
amazing.
I'd never had a Black woman boss before. And so just being so close to her as my principal was life-changing. But yes, I just did, necessary but sometimes mundane administrative things. But I did get asked to go to a lot of trainings at the White House, all sorts of development trainings. I got to rub elbows with all different appointees across different agencies. I got to go to some rocket launches. I got to travel for quarterly conferences. So I had so much exposure, like my career just really bloomed and blossomed during that time.
That is so cool. Just the subtle flex of it all. And Maurielle, you can be so modest about the things that you've done that it's like pulling teeth having to get it out of you sometimes. But I appreciate you sharing that. So pivoting more into the now in terms of future. So tell us more about social entrepreneurship and what does that look like for, African American communities and other young people who may be interested in social entrepreneurship. What does that look like for you, and what guidance do you have for other young people interested in social entrepreneurship?
So firstly, I say social entrepreneurship is a super wide space. Anyone, if you have enough entrepreneurial grit, creativity, and love for all, and wanting to create solutions for the good of all, you have a place there. I would say, based on my experience at a few organizations, it can feel a little like a club, like you have to speak a certain language to be able to understand or get in. And so that was some of the work I was trying to do from the inside, and just making sure that these spaces are accessible to all. So that work really isn't done yet. And I see myself in the leadership in coaching space really working with people that are trying to create an indent on social change. Like, how can I support them in doing that? Hey, Danielle. And in a meaningful but holistic and healthy way,
Right.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing that. For those who are joining in, please feel free to drop any questions or comments that you may have. My next question is I'm going to utilize your expertise in this area in particular. So in terms of mental health right now, during this time, COVID-19, for folks who may be very isolated, what advice or tips or strategies do you have to help and encourage individuals to stay sane and safe during this time?
Oh, that's a good question. I would say, firstly, just understand that nothing is normal. Nothing is normal. You may feel tired when you typically don't. You may feel anxious when you typically don't. Like, everything is really shaken up on its head. I would say use the time to get to know yourself and figure out what it is that's key to you. What is it that is important for you to do every day? Because that's going to be different for everybody. But I would just say balance is key. So not feeling like you need to hustle your way through this thing. But if that makes you feel good, then do that. But balance it with rest. Balance it with, maybe you really love cheeses, and a box of cheeses is going to make you feel so good today. But, just balance that out with, maybe a healthier, more filling and energizing meal next time. So balance is key, because you got to be kind to yourself. These are unusual times. And so you really into your self-care toolkit and be able to just love on yourself. But balance.
Thank you for sharing that. So I have two more questions to ask. And for folks, if you have questions, feel free to put them in the comment box and I'll be sure to incorporate them in between these two questions. But the next question I have is, if you could speak to your younger self, is there anything that you know now that you wish you knew when you first started this path?
For sure. And this actually is it Kira?
Mm-hmm.
This actually answers Kira's question. I would tell
Okay.
myself that everything will be as it should. Like I would tell myself that there's a balance about creating a plan and making things happen, and then there's also allowing things to happen. So I would tell my younger self not to hold too tightly to a plan, though it is important to have an idea of where you want to go and be able to help yourself, right? Universe helps those that help themselves, but you also have to still be open-minded enough to receive the goodness that's coming to you. So yeah, to answer your question and to answer your question, Alex, I do honestly think as I look back over my life, I'm only 29, but as I look back over my career thus far, one thing has led me to the next, has led me to the next. You know, life just happened in the way that it was supposed to. And it always feel good, but it's still good.
Right,
Sometimes
right.
it's stuff, life happening to you. But at the end of the day, I would not be here without all of those sucky moments, and I'm so happy that I'm here.
And I'll say I'm learning to incorporate that. I think I personally sit on the other end of the spectrum where it's more of like, having some plan, some direction of what I like to do is say, this is where I would like to be. Maybe like a 3-year, 5-year, 10-year. Here's some things I'm going to try to do intentional steps to get me in those directions, to get me in those spaces, in those rooms, whether it's going to conferences or networking with people in that industry that I want to get into, whether it's doing more research and more learning, whether it's needing to get a master's degree because that's what people in that field or at that level that I want to go to, what they have. And then kind of incorporating that. But at the same time, life is going to happen. So what you may think the key is being adaptable and flexible enough and not being too rigid and just doing one perspective, because I know for me, I was on one particular path in foreign affairs and life said, actually, you're going to go, you're needed this way.
Right.
Your skills are needed here. That's how I received that. So I agree with you, going with the flow, excuse me, of life and being flexible and patient with yourself. Trying to have a little idea of where you wanted to go. Kira has a follow-up question. What were things that made you feel like you wanted to quit, and how did you move forward?
So first, I just want to plus one what you said, because absolutely. So I didn't want to come off like, don't have a plan, just like everything will be fine. Like, have a plan, have an idea, but the balance, the delicate balance of doing that, having a mission, having some goals, but also being receptive and open to like reroutes. So anyway, let's see. What were things that made me feel like I wanted to quit? I'm just going to keep it real. I started crying in the stairwell at work. I did. I was very unhappy. I was going through some challenges in my mental health, and everything just kind of came to a head. I became extremely triggered by my town council meetings. Like I would have a panic attack just anticipating the meeting. And so I told myself, I have to relinquish this duty and care for myself. It was honestly the hardest decision I ever made. The hardest decision I ever made, because I take that duty, showing up faithfully, so seriously. But it was an exercise in me putting myself first. I actually resigned on Valentine's Day, so I called it like a radical act of self-love, Kira, like I knew in my heart what needed to be done, but my body was directly telling me to do it now.
Thank you for that. And just my thoughts on that. What were things that made you feel like you wanted to quit, and how did you move forward? For me, I'm a pretty spiritual person, so I like to think that there's a bigger purpose. I'm just a small piece in a bit much larger puzzle.
Yeah.
And sometimes you have to take a step back, a couple days, if you will, to really frame, where are you? What is life as you know it right now? Where are you trying to go? You know, if you're feeling overwhelmed, because sometimes generally that's what it's like, overwhelming or frustrating that things just aren't going your way. That's how I felt at certain points. And I would have to take a step back and say, what am I in control of? What can I try to do, you know, to keep move forward in those steps where I see some interest or some vision.
Right.
And another simple drop, I'll say, sometimes you got to ask yourself every day, what brings you joy? What brought me joy today? Are you doing things, even if it's like little things, even if it's just like, I wore an outfit and I felt like I looked good, that brought me joy. Eating Oreos, watching a silly show, like things that truly bring you joy. Being outside, being in nature, writing, journaling, all these things, which Maurielle, I know you're I'm gonna pass it back to you. I'm gonna tag team you in a second. But that question just in particular really resonates with me, because there have been moments in my life where I'm just like, I don't know if this is the right direction, or this isn't where I thought I would be right now, or things just aren't making sense. There's just confusion. I'm overwhelmed, whatever the case may be. And in that moment, I have to stop, take a breath, pray if I need to, pray for some covering of guidance and peace, and really do some internal thinking. Where am I? Where am I trying to go? Where should I prioritize my time and my efforts? What comes natural to me? Sometimes we're resisting, and Maurielle, I'm going to pass it to you so you could talk. Sometimes we're resisting what our natural capabilities and our abilities are, and not leaning into that. So we got to learn to lean into those things, because otherwise, the further we resist, you know, it's like that push-pull effect. So, you know, that's what I have to. Maurielle, did you have any comments on that or any perspective?
I retweet all of that. So the add is remove the self-judgment that comes when you're not where you think you should be. You know, it's just like you failing, or it's just a thing that happened, you know, and it may suck, but don't heap all of the self-judgment that can come along with that. It's not going to serve you. Yeah. But what you said was, yes. So good. So good.
Thanks, girl. So my final piece of advice is, I want to be respectful of your time here. What advice, and feel free to put any concluding thoughts on this question too, but what advice do you have for someone who is considering, you know, social entrepreneurship, this field, who may be considering going into politics? What advice do you have for a younger person, a student, person of color who is going into these spaces?
Yeah. The first thing that comes up for me is to network. Alex is a networking queen, y'all. To network in a way that feels real and authentic for you. So like what I did when I was in the district office, I was like trying to claw my way onto the hill right off of graduation. I joined the CBA, a Congressional Black Associates kickball team. And those are still some of my closest friends to this day. So if you're not good at, you know, rubbing the elbows at a happy hour, you know, there are ways to build relationships and to learn from people in a way that feels good and honest for you. So that's the first thing I would say. You know, just be a sponge, absorb as much as you can.
Right. Maurielle, thank you so much for taking the time to speak to us and share your journey. What's the best way for people to get in contact with you if they wanted to connect with you?
So you can reach me on my Instagram at Hey Coach Mari, and you can also check out my website, which will be live very soon at heycoachmari.com. Go ahead and put your email address in, and you'll be first to get my newsletter. And yeah, I'm open for business, y'all. So if there's any skills, any intersections of collaboration, like, let's work.
Word. Thank you so much, Maurielle, for speaking to us today, and thank you everyone for joining. So please continue to tune in for our future talks, and we look forward to seeing everyone again and hearing more great information. So have a great weekend, everybody.
Thank you, Alex. Bye, everyone.
All right.